Hey, it's Anthony with Land Title. I wanted to bring you our Boulder County update for the month. This is the big one, so hang in there, but I wanted to talk a little bit about fall markets and just what that really means. So we're looking at October data here. You can really start to see the change in, even though we're in a rising inventory market, the inventory still slows down in the fall, but also this coupled with huge buyer slowdown as well, because there's just a lot less activity and people kind of take a pause for the holidays. It gets dark early, like there's a lot going on in the fall and the winter time. So with that being said, we're going to see a dip in active units. We're going to see average sales price continue to slip just a little bit more than it already has since about April. But the under contract rate is going to continue to slide down month for month. But what does that really mean for all of us in the industry, and what does that mean for the market? Well, let's dive into it just a little bit. So this would be basically our active units by area. So you can see Longmont and Boulder are kind of staying steady right where they're at. Year over year, Longmont's had this huge boost in active inventory, but places like Boulder have not. And a lot of that is due to just the shift in the market that's taking place and how certain markets are a little bit more resilient, like the luxury market, the higher end of the market. People will wait, people will hold off, people will make different decisions. If you look at somewhere like Erie or Lafayette or Longmont, you have these different trends that take place. Erie has a booming inventory environment, which it hasn't had in a long time, but they're definitely benefiting from that because there's so many buyers looking in that marketplace. Plus, price per square foot out there is so good that people that maybe would have bought in Boulder are moving out to Lafayette. People that maybe would have bought in Louisville or Lafayette are moving out to Erie because of the cost of money, right? And that being said, we're kind of going to deal with that for a little while here. But going into next year, we should see interest rates start to come down a little bit, and we should see inventory levels rise along the process. But as interest rates lower, you're going to see buyer demand pick up again, and consumer confidence will start to come back as well. So let's take a look at month supply. So we're in a month supply of about 2 months of inventory right now. That is substantially more than we were at in January, February. It's a little more than double where we were last year. But the big thing about that is that we're still in a really low inventory environment. Keep your eye on 2018, 2019, because in 2019, it was a pretty decent real estate market, but interest rates were a little bit higher. As they started to come down, because we were battling some other things back then, pre-COVID, inventory started to fall, and it was going to, that was kind of the peak of where inventory hit at, was 4 months. You're going to see a lot of that sort of behavior, like the 2019 behavior, into 2023. And a lot of that due to the high interest rates, the cost of money, the slowdown in the area, but that doesn't necessarily mean that prices are going to come down, right? It means that inventory is going to start piling up, and as people have to sell, they'll sell, and if they don't have to sell, they might sit on their property for a while, even if it's on the market. Now, if we look at what does that mean for the buyers out there, or like what does that really mean for how long it takes to get an offer, if we look at our days in the MLS, days in the MLS is just active to under contract time. So the peak of the market ever was back in May, and we had 9.5 days in the MLS. So 9.5 days from active to under contract. We were one of the fastest markets in the country at the time, about 7 days, as fast as you can really go. So then here we are at a month, right? It feels like this huge extreme swing. We're up barely from last year, right? If you look at a year ago, because the fall market tends to slow down a little bit, but it should look like a horseshoe. January or December being the highest days in MLS, to May being the lowest days in MLS. And back in 2019, you kind of saw that behavior, right? But it topped out around 60. Back in 2019, we'd be in 40s right now. So we're still not all the way there. We haven't recovered to kind of a more normalized market. But at this time, this is a really good sign because buyers are still active. They're still taking things very seriously if they're shopping, and they're still putting things under contract pretty quick. 30 days from active to under contract at a home in Boulder County is actually remarkably well, even though it still feels like it's dramatically slower than it was before. A month to go under contract on a home is actually like a pretty quick market. Now, let's take a look by price point, because I think the big thing we got to remember by price point is just how much inventory has really moved, right? We had a little bit of a slowdown on the luxury side over the last month. It's the first month since the beginning of the year where luxury was not booming more so than the year prior. Now, that being said, year-to-date numbers are still really remarkably good, over 2 million. You can really see just how many homes have sold, especially like 1.5 million plus. We've had this huge surge of sales, right? And that being said, this shows a lot of resilience in the Boulder County market, because everything else has really suffered because of the cost of money. Jumbo loans have been a little bit cheaper, but it's not really like a great trade up time, even though with inventory levels, this should be like a good trade up time. It's just the fact that cost of money is to borrow is so difficult. And who wants to give up their 3% loan to go buy at 6 or 7% at another part of the market, right? And especially if you're borrowing more money. So that being said, let's talk a little bit about what buyers and sellers are feeling at any given price range. You can see at 3+ million now at the luxury part of the market, or even 2 million plus. We're starting to enter that balanced or buyer side of the market, and it's starting to slow down just a little bit, but it's not ultra slow. I mean, if you look at the bulk of the market, everything is still under 30 days or around 30 days from active to under contract. 3+ million shows 80 days, so some homes are definitely starting to sit around a lot longer at that luxury range, right? But if you're in the bulk, the median kind of range, that let's just call it, 800 to a million, we have 2.5 months of inventory. They're still moving relatively quickly, 30 days, but it's just a little bit more difficult, right? You have to price appropriately. You really have to look at their average days on market, and you really have to kind of, button it up and make sure it's moving ready. And if you got an offer, it might be your best offer you have because you got one, right? It may take 8 or 12 showings to get there, and it might take a month to get that many showings, but things are still moving, right? It's way more expensive to do it. So only people moving right now are people that really have to, or people that have certainty in their jobs, right? Because a lot of the reason buyers aren't moving right now is they feel the uncertainty in the economy. Everyone has this looming recession talk, and that being said, everyone's just a little wary, right? Which is kind of the point of all of that monetary and fiscal policy, to get everyone to pull back and slow down, stop spending money, so our inflation rate isn't so high. All right, so let's talk a little bit about total sales. Year to date, Boulder County is down 22% in total sales, but when you look at this fall, this is the first real true fall we felt. October's down almost 40% in total solds. So people have really hit the pause button going into fall, and I would expect you see that pop in the February timeframe again, but we're going to have a really relatively slow seasonal change, right? Look back at 2019. If you look at January in 2019, we had nearly only 200 sold units. Now we're finally kind of trending back that direction, and I would actually be surprised if we don't get below 200 units in that January timeframe, because that's stuff that would have gotten under contract in December. So that being said, it's just kind of seasonal again. We're starting to feel real seasonality, and the last 2 years were just an anomaly, right? So with those anomalies out of the way, now we're getting back to more of those traditional normal ranges that we felt before. Let's talk a little bit about sales price, because average sales price is one of those things. It felt like we've been chasing it since about April or May, and it's been lowering just a little bit every month as people are kind of adjusting to the price of money, because people a lot of times buy on payment. They don't necessarily buy on price, right? If you can afford $4,000 a month, you're shopping for a home that's $4,000 a month. And as that's changed every single month throughout the year, that's become increasingly more difficult. But that doesn't mean that prices have really come down. The composition of sales have changed. There's a lot that goes into this, but what I like to measure is the trailing 12-month percentage change. So what that means is over the last 12 months versus the 13 to 24 months ago, it's like an average of averages, right? So this really shows us how much has the tide risen and how much more expensive has the market gotten. And over the last year, it's about 14% more expensive in Boulder County than it was before. Now, month over month, it looks like it's changed a lot. It's bouncing around quite a bit right now, but that really gives us a better view of long-term appreciation. So everyone's saying, well, why is Boulder County such a good buy going into a recession? And a lot of that is the fact that it's a resilient market. We're still seeing large increases, right? Even places like Longmont got 8% increase in the last trailing 12 months, right? So over the last 12 months, they've seen a rise well above the nation. So that's kind of why we look at these stats. And if you want to look at certain places like Lafayette or Louisville, they were dramatically affected by the Marshall fires, and they've had a really different response. You're seeing it in Erie as well, where they have 20 or 17 or 21% increase in their average sales prices. So places like Boulder, I would expect that to slow down, but at the same time, people in Boulder just won't make a move if they don't have to. So that keeps their percentage change elevated quite a bit. Last thing that I wanted to talk about was our percentage sold price to list price. So this is really like, if you want a bargain, when do you shop? Or when are the most bidding wars taking place in the market? So you could see back in April, it was the peak of the market this year, right? It's about a month before normal, interest rates started to rise, and we started to see that taper off into the summer, and then here we are entering the fall at 97.7%. This is actually the lowest percentage sold price to list price since about 2012. So if you're looking for a deal on a home, this is the time to get a deal on that house, because it may be just barely below market rate, but this is the best you're going to get, and it's best that you're going to see in a long time. I mean, we generally sit around 98, 90%, 99% in a fall market, peak at 100, 101% in the peak of the market in that April-May timeframe. So it definitely is really productive to purchase in the fall, and it's just a little bit more difficult to sell in the fall, but that's kind of the market we're in, right? So we're finally getting back to some seasonal norms. I just wanted to be able to share that with you. So if you have any other questions, I'm Anthony at Land Title. You can always catch me in the next video or reach out to me. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time. Thank you.